World War II was not just a war of armies and nations, it was a war of people, young men who had never fired a gun, fathers who left their children behind, teenagers who lied about their age to fight. Farmers, factory workers, students, artists, and clerks were suddenly turned into soldiers and sent into history's deadliest conflict. Between 1939 and 1945, more than 100 million soldiers were mobilized across the world. They came from every continent. They wore different uniforms, spoke different languages, prayed to different gods, and followed different flags. But all of them shared the same uncertainty, whether they would live to see the end of the war. When the fighting finally stopped, the world began counting. Counting the dead, counting the missing, counting the wounded, and slowly counting those who survived. Historians estimate that around 70 to 85 million people died during World War II, making it the deadliest war in human history. Out of those, roughly 21 to 25 million were military personnel. The rest were civilians, men, women, and children who never wore a uniform but were caught in the storm. That means that tens of millions of soldiers survived. Depending on the country and front, survival rates varied dramatically. Some armies lost nearly half their men, others lost far fewer. But globally, it is estimated that around 75 to 80 million soldiers survived the war in some form. Many physically, many mentally scarred, many permanently changed. But survival did not always mean victory. A soldier surviving World War II could mean many things. It could mean returning home with medals and pride. It could mean coming back without a leg, without a friend, without sleep, without peace. Some survived combat but died years later from wounds, disease, or trauma. Others lived long lives but never spoke about what they saw on the Western Front. Soldiers faced machine gun fire, artillery barrages, and relentless bombing. In Normandy, thousands were cut down before even reaching the beach. Those who survived crawled through sand soaked with blood, hearing the screams of men they had trained with only days before. Some survived because they moved at the right second, some because a bullet hit the man beside them instead. Survival was often random. In the East, the war was even more brutal. On the Eastern Front, particularly between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, survival was far less likely. The fighting was constant, personal, and unforgiving. Entire divisions were wiped out. Cities were destroyed street by street, winter killed as effectively as bullets. Soviet soldiers were often sent into battle with minimal equipment, sometimes without rifles, expected to pick one up from the fallen. Of the roughly 34 million soldiers mobilized by the Soviet Union, an estimated 8.7 to 11 million died. That means more than 20 million survived, but almost every survivor carried deep physical or emotional wounds. Many returned to villages that no longer existed. Some returned to families who never knew they were alive. German soldiers experienced a different kind of survival. Early in the war, victories were fast and morale was high. Later, survival became retreat, surrender, or imprisonment. Millions of German soldiers survived by becoming prisoners of war. Many spent years in camps across Europe and the Soviet Union. Some did not return home until the 1950s. The United States mobilized around 16 million soldiers during the war. Approximately 405,000 were killed. That means over 15 million American soldiers survived, but survival did not mean untouched. Many returned with visible injuries. Others carried invisible ones, nightmares, guilt, and memories that haunted them for decades. British and Commonwealth forces mobilized around 6 million soldiers, with roughly 450,000 killed. Millions survived combat across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Indian soldiers fought in huge numbers under the British flag, many far from home, in conditions they had never imagined. African soldiers fought in jungles and deserts, often unrecognized for their sacrifices. In the Pacific, survival depended on endurance. Japanese soldiers were trained never to surrender. Many fought until death. Of the roughly 6 million Japanese military personnel, around 2.1 million died. The survivors often returned to a country devastated by bombing, hunger, and defeat. Some returned from islands years after the war had ended, still believing the fight continued. Chinese soldiers fought for 8 long years, often with outdated weapons and little support. Millions survived, but China lost an estimated 3 to 4 million soldiers. Survivors returned to a nation still torn by civil war, poverty, and political upheaval. But numbers alone cannot explain survival. Some soldiers survived by skill, some by discipline, some by courage, many by luck. A shell lands 10 meters away instead of 5. A patrol is delayed by minutes and avoids an ambush. A bullet jams, a medic arrives in time, a stranger pulls you from rubble. These moments decided who survived and who became a name carved into stone. Survival also meant adapting to horror. Soldiers learned to sleep under bombardment, to eat beside the dead, to keep moving when their legs shook, to laugh in moments that should have broken them. Humor, friendship, routine, these became survival tools as important as weapons. When the war ended in 1945, celebrations filled the streets. Flags waved, bells rang, but for the soldiers who survived, peace did not arrive overnight. Many returned home unable to explain what they had seen. Families expected joy. Survivors brought silence. Some woke up screaming, some avoided crowds, some drank, some never adjusted. The term post-traumatic stress disorder did not yet exist, but millions lived with it. Yet, from these survivors came the rebuilding of the world. They became teachers, mechanics, farmers, engineers, artists, politicians. They built homes, roads, and cities from ruins. They raised children who would grow up in a world shaped by the lessons of war. Many became strong supporters of peace, knowing firsthand the cost of conflict. Today, very few World War II soldiers are still alive. Time has taken most of them, but their survival mattered. Each one carried a piece of history inside them. Every survivor was a living answer to the question of what humanity can endure. So when we ask how many soldiers survived World War II, the answer is not just a number. Yes, tens of millions survived, but survival came in many forms. Some survived with pride, some with pain, some with silence.